Welcome to the Studio Chat podcast, the podcast designed to be your companion in the journey of self-discovery. I'm Barbara Thompson, your host, and a dedicated therapist. I'm the founder and owner of Self-Care Studio, a private counselling practice. With my clients, in courses that I create, on this podcast, I am committed to ensuring that you have the support that you need. I created this podcast as a space for you to feel a sense of connection and a reminder that you're not alone in this thing that we call life, this adventure. This podcast is your weekly reminder to trust yourself, live life authentically, and embrace the path that is uniquely yours. Together, we'll explore ways to break free from people-pleasing, overthinking, allowing you to claim your time and energy to live life on your terms. You'll be joined by myself as I take you through some episodes, or during the year, I'll have some special self-care experts as guests on my podcast. So if you're ready to step into a life that's truly for you, join me on this journey. Let's navigate the twists and turns of life together, and more importantly, live your life for you. So thank you so much for choosing to spend some time with me today. Let the studio chat begin. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're listening to this podcast at the moment. My name is Barbara Thompson. I'm the host of the Studio Chat podcast. And today we are jetting over to the past, 3:00 Tuesday. At the moment, it's 8:00 on a Wednesday morning, but I'm going to go back in time to Tuesday afternoon, and I'm going across to Illinois, and I'm speaking with Lexi Hannah today, and she helps mid-career women leave careers that are no longer serving them, helps them to stop settling and to go after their dreams. She works with clients on a subconscious level to make changes that stick. And this is something that resonates with me because a lot of work as a therapist I do with my clients is on a subconscious level, because a lot of the time, especially with working and career, and our job, we're on autopilot. A lot of us dedicate a lot of our lives to, as part of our identity, our career. And a lot of people, it rules their life. There's no right or wrong here, but it can rule their life. And a lot of people, I think, are stuck in a career with obligation. Like, I've been here for so long, or I've been here for so long, I get paid X amount, I've got good benefits, I'm fearful to leave. And we were just talking about it before. Also, in my experience, when I worked for a company long term, and I gave a lot of myself to the company, and I don't regret that. But it was interesting when I left, it was kind of like, bye. Like, it's just something that you just don't realize that, oh my God, I am replaceable. And actually, it's just a job and it's just work. And I think today is going to be helpful for all of us to really have the moment to spend this time on this episode to check in with yourself and think, am I actually happy with my career, with what I'm doing? Because Lexi's going to have so many tips and tricks for us to help us, if we're not happy with it, or to even think about it, what to do. So that was a bit of a lengthy, I think that's probably my longest introduction. So thank you for being so patient with me, Lexi. Hello, welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast today, Barbara. Yeah, you gave a great introduction, and I completely agree with every point that you said. So I'm excited to chat today.
Yeah, I think this is going to be I'm like already excited. We haven't even started, because personally for me too, what I have always done as a career, my work ethic is something that has always been a part of me. I've always been proud of what I've done. It's always been part of my personality. And interesting too, though, I have also used work as an escape. I've also, at times of my life when things have been hard, I didn't realize I was doing it, and I would use my career as like I've got too much work to do, or I've got this busy project on, rather than actually going, hang on, what am I running away from? What am I scared of?
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's so true. And I did the same thing for so long. It can be something like, some people turn to alcohol or to food, and some people turn to work to give them that sense of self-worth. When really we need to look internal to see what we need and what we're feeling, and all that good stuff that as a therapist.
All the good stuff, all the stuff that people want to run away from at the beginning.
Yes, yes.
As a life and purpose coach, Can you share with us a little bit about how you actually got to what you're doing today?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I had a longstanding career. I was in the human resources field. Do you call it human resources
Yep,
where you're at
HR.
as well when you're
Yep.
okay? Yep, HR. And I was in that field for 17 years. So I had climbed the corporate ladder. I was in a leadership position. And I was at the point where I have a family, I have 4 kids. I was working all of the time. I did use work as kind of that escape as well. I didn't really have a lot of boundaries around work. And I found myself in a place where I was just completely unhappy. And I thought it was because of my work, and some of it had to do with my work and whatnot, but I realized I needed to make a big change. I was spending too much time away from home, too much time working. And so I wanted to make a change, and I wanted to make a change for some time, but I felt really stuck. I had what people would consider to be a good career. I made decent money. And I had this thought that I would have to start over if I left, and that all of the work that I had done up until that point would just be like gone. Like there was nothing else I could do that would use those skills. That was my, limiting beliefs really stopping me from moving forward at the time. But I really wanted to make a change. So I sought help. I sought out a coach. I worked with a coach. I started implementing different ways of doing things. I started meditating every day. So I became much more aware of what was going on with me and much more aware of my thoughts. And I realized at some point during this journey that I could leave my job. I would be okay. And that I really just needed a plan to move forward. And so that's what I did. I created a plan to move forward, to really discover the work that truly lights me up. And through that journey, I worked with some coaches, and I knew this is what I meant to do. I meant to help other people realize that they can leave their career. It doesn't matter how long you've been in it. You can build a new career, and you can take all the skills and all the lessons that you've learned and use it to your advantage in your next career.
Yeah, isn't it interesting? Because a lot of
Yeah.
people I know would be listening to you going, oh, yeah, that's nice. Lexi did it, but I could never do that.
Yes. Yep. And that's what I used to think as well. And it wasn't until I began to think that, maybe it is possible. And once you start changing your thoughts and just kind of looking to see what else is possible, you're going to see more evidence of that. So, I worked with a coach, and she had a booming business, and um, that kind of first opened my eyes to the world of kind of this online coach opportunity where you can work with people all over the world, and you can help them improve their life. And that's a career that you can have, and you can decide your working hours. And it's just, it was just the perfect fit for me.
Yeah, because when you think about what you were doing, HR is actually the core of it, helping people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
that's
is. It
what you
is.
were doing. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. So, I learned a lot about people and about careers and different industries and whatnot. So, it was a lot more of a natural transition than I had ever envisioned it to be. Yeah.
See, isn't that interesting that when you're out the other, I say out the other end, you're out the other side.
Yeah.
Um, were you fearful of it because you've got a family and you know that would have been it's an interesting decision to make. How did you separate you being the mother to you being like Lexi, the individual, as in I want to be happy and this is I want to do something and then I'm fulfilled?
Yeah. Well, for me, it came down to I didn't want my kids to see me miserable. And I felt that I wasn't as present with them as I could be because I was always worried about my workload and, what I was forgetting. I had a lot on my plate. And so my mind was always on work. So even when I'm, sat down for dinner or playing with the kids, I was still thinking, oh my gosh, I forgot to do this. Or, this is happening tomorrow and I have to prepare for this. And so my mind was always occupied with work. And I realized that's not helping anyone. It's not helping my kids. It's not helping me. And so I really did need to put myself first so I could figure this out, and be a better mom and a better wife and just a better person overall.
Would you say that there was something within you that kept, was it, how did it start? Like, how did you recognize that I need support, I need to talk to someone because I'm not happy in my role? Like, did something significant
Yeah.
happen at work, or was it just over time,
Mm.
like, ugh, I don't want to go to work anymore. I don't enjoy this.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, it was kind of a slow thing where just gradually, it just felt like my heart wasn't in it anymore. I just felt like I was meant to do something else. It was kind of this like deep feeling inside. And I was at that point mid-career or midlife, where some people think they're having, am I having a midlife crisis? And, some people do make very big changes around that turning 40 and that
Yep.
sort of thing. And it all happened at the same time for me. So I was like, what is this? So I kind of, sat with it for a while and I thought about things way too much, before I ever took any action. And it was a few years before I really thought I can't do this for the rest of my life. And being in mid-career, I still have half of my career in front of me, half of it's behind me, but half of it's in front of me. And when you've climbed the ladder and you realize there's nowhere further that I want to go and I don't even want to be here anymore, it's just this feeling that I knew I needed a change and I needed a big change.
It's difficult though, because I know many of us listening to this have worked hard, did climb that ladder. I was one of them.
Yes. Yeah.
It was very humbling moving to Australia. And then I just got and like, I don't want anyone to hear, I'm not job shaming anyone. There's nothing, you got to be careful what you say these days. But
Yeah.
I just did a job that I wasn't managing a team of people. I didn't have the autonomy. It was just a different role. And it was almost like I'd never worked in that role before. Even my family had a family business. So I always worked in a family business, was always in kind of a managerial role. Then when I went to university, after that, every job I was in, within a few months, I was always promoted or always like managing. Even if I didn't want to manage people, they always quickly were like, actually, you need to manage a center, you need to do this. I was like, oh. So through my career, I've always kind of been able to do what I want when I want and be a manager. And when I moved to Australia,
Yeah.
it was like, to be honest, a kick in the guts. And in my head, I was like,
Mm.
it was a good reality ego check, because I had to be like, this isn't for, I was planning to have a family and settle down with someone that I moved here for, and that didn't happen. But in the meantime, I was just like, not that, oh, can't believe when someone would ask me to do something in my head, and this is being very honest, I'd be like, oh, I don't normally do this. Or it was just like that, oh, I
Mm-hmm.
have to do this now. I have to file these papers away in alphabetical order. And then I'd have an older gentleman like explaining to me how to do that. And I'd just have to sit there and
Oh
listen. And
my.
it was good for me. And in
Yeah.
that just learnt, I just really could separate myself from my career for a few months and just sit
Mm-hmm.
with it and be like, actually, I gave my entire everything to something. And when you walk away from it, life carries on, people move on.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
so it was a really good thing to be like, okay, well, actually, what do I want to do? Not what I think
Mm-hmm.
my parents think I should do, not what, all the subjects I did at school and all my studies have led me to this. Well, I've only worked so hard to get to this level. If I stop, I'm not going to be able to move up. And
Yeah.
that gave me that deeper meaning of, oh, actually, what do I want to do for myself?
Yes. Yes. And I think it's so important to just ask ourselves what we really want, because sometimes we get into something for our parents or for, society or our friends. Everybody's going to college and then, choosing a business degree or whatever it is. And then the years, they happen, they fly by. And then suddenly, you're in a position and you look around and think, what am I doing? Who am I? What do I really want to be doing? And, at that point, it's hard. You wonder if you're even cut out to do anything different. It's definitely a journey. It really is.
Mm. And I know a lot of successful people that didn't finish high school or didn't go to university or didn't do anything, and they're fine. It's interesting that in our
Yes.
education system, I know in New Zealand, I can't speak of Australia or your country, but I know in New Zealand it was so drummed into us at the age of like
Yes.
13, teachers would be on your
Hmm.
back. What do you want to do? What do you want to do? Oh, you've got to pick the right
Yep.
subjects. If you don't pick the right subjects, you're going to ruin your life. And if you don't pass this big
Yep.
exam, you're not going to be able to get a job. And then it was like
Yes.
you had to get all the certifications, and then you can go to university. And then when you got to
Hmm.
university, no one will hire you. And actually, I did get to that point when I left university. A job I went for that I got, one of the interview questions was, do you have a degree? Because we only hire people that have degrees. And I was like, yeah, in
Hmm.
the back of my mind, I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and it's the same way here in the US. For the most part, it's really, when I was a kid, especially, it's really drilled into you. Like, you need to go to college, you need to be responsible, you need to choose a career that's good, where you're going to have good benefits and you can retire at this age and blah, blah, blah. And so, that's what you do, especially when we're young and impressionable and our parents are telling us like this is the way. We think that that's the only way, but like you mentioned, there are people that dropped out of high school and are millionaires, billionaires. The education system is not necessary in order to make money. And so it's all yeah, there's just so much to it. But yeah, I think we are kind of put in these boxes where we're held back, based on what society or what the people that we were around when we were kids told us. And yeah, sometimes we need to break free from that.
Mm. And just talking about it is the awareness that some people may need. So, what's the
Yeah.
difference? I'd love to ask you, what's the difference between feeling fulfilled and happy at work and just needing a few days off to hating your job where something really needs to change?
Yeah, so I think that we all have those off days, and sometimes it's even an off month or an off couple of weeks where we might be burnt out because we have too much work on our plate or whatnot. But at the core, we still love what we're doing for work. I think when it's a persistent feeling, for me, it was an intuitive feeling that kept getting louder and louder that this isn't where you want to be. And so for me, it was just listening to myself and really getting in touch with myself and what I wanted. And, I realized that this is more than just an off day, an off few years. I was just unhappy and I really wanted to make a change. And ultimately, what I was seeking was more freedom and flexibility, which you can get a variety of ways. There's a lot of different companies that provide a lot of different, flexibility and whatnot. But I really wanted to control my schedule, be able to be there for my kids. Um, I got really clear on what I wanted. And once I started getting clear on what I wanted, the answers started to appear. You know how they say when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. It's like I was feeling so stuck, but then I would take an action forward, and um, the lessons I needed kept coming forward, and until I realized that here's what you are meant to do.
Can you believe the HR Lexi back then is doing what she's doing now?
No, no, no. Even like 5 years ago, I never could have imagined that. when I was a kid or even a teenager or whatnot, I used to think about, wouldn't it be nice to have your own company or work for yourself? But I would always shut that thought out like, well, that's possible for some people, but that's not possible for you.
Yeah.
And I told myself that for so long that it wasn't even a possibility for me, um, until it was, until I began to see that you really can do anything you want as long as you believe that you can. That's really what it comes down to, is believing in yourself, trusting yourself, and believing you can make the changes you desire.
So when you're talking about making the changes you desire, what are some steps, a couple of steps that you could share with us today for people to help them get on track to, their dream career and their dream job?
Yeah, I would say to just start to explore. So one of the questions you can ask yourself is, what would I do if I knew I couldn't fail? When you take failure out of the equation and you start dreaming, you come up with all sorts of possibilities. Now, the thing isn't that we won't fail, because we will always fail. That is part of our journey, is to fail. That's the only way that we're going to learn our lessons. But when you kind of take that off the table and you just start dreaming again, um, who knows what you'll come up with. But another thing that you can do to get a little bit clearer on what you want is to look at where you're at in your life and in your career, and think about, what don't you like? What is holding you back? And often the way in which we realize what we do want is to first look at what we don't want, because what we do want is the opposite of what we don't want. And for some of us, we're so used to looking at what we don't want instead of what we do want, that can be a real eye opener. You start looking at your schedule, for example. I don't want to work somewhere where I have to be there at 8 o'clock a.m. sharp, and from that, you deduct that I want to work somewhere, or in an environment where it's flexible. I don't have to be there at a certain time. And so that can really open a lot of doors and a lot of ideas. And I would encourage people to just start writing it out, write what comes to you. Even if it's in the notes app on your phone, what I don't want, what I do want. And when you start thinking about it and actively taking action to figure out what you don't want, what you do want, you'll see doors start to open. So that can be just a starting step. When I work with my clients, we work on what I call the lit up career framework. But what work is going to make you feel lit up inside? What work brings you energy rather than drains your energy? And so one of the first things we look at is your natural gifts or ways of being. And we don't always know these right off the bat. Sometimes we have to ask other people, what are the gifts that you see in me? What makes me different than other people? And that'll start to give us clues as to what direction we could go in. We also look at those skills that you love to do, that you would do every day. Your core values are such a great guiding point. So just figuring out your top 3 to 5 core values can be a real eye opener. Getting clear on the ideal environment that you want. We talked a bit about schedule before, but more than that, do you want to work in a remote environment? Do you like being and working around a lot of people? What's the company culture like if you want to work for a company? What's their mission, vision, values? You want to make sure that they align with your mission, vision, and values. What are those interests and passions that you have that could be reflected at work? And then ultimately, what is the vision that you have for yourself and your life, and how does work fit into that? So I think it's a lot to consider, but when you're making a move, you want it to be towards something that you really want. You don't want it to just be a move away from what you don't want. So I would just encourage people to really focus on getting clear about what you want so you have more of a focused um, approach to your search rather than just looking for any and all jobs that are different than what you do now just to take you away from what you do. That might bring you some peace for a little while, but ultimately, if you want to have a long-term career that you love, you really need to look at what brings you joy and what sort of work is going to align with the life that you want.
Mm. And I mean, that's a lot. That's really helpful for someone that's ready for the change. And thank you so much because you've been so kind in sharing so much of how people can get started, of, writing things down and really, looking at um like the type of person they are, looking at their core values, and that's really important. But also something I want to highlight, if people are really stuck at the moment and really unhappy, it is so hard to shift out of that because you're in such a negative mindset to it's really normal. And I know I've had times in my life where I always knew I wanted to have my own business, but I was like, I've got no idea what I want to do. I'm so lost. I'm actually not really interested in anything. And I know I would look on a job board here and look at different companies and different jobs. And I was just like, I just want to normalize that it's okay for a moment in time in your life to be like, I actually have no idea what I like, no idea what I want to do. I know what I'm good at. And just to have that little moment of, it's just normal. I was there. I was there. And
Yes.
yeah. And that's why I asked you that
Yes.
question.
So normal.
I
Yeah.
asked you that question, what you're doing now. Like, could HR Lexi see what you're doing now? And you said no. And it's the same for me. Could marketing Barbara see herself doing this? Hell no.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And even like, I think back to like when I was in college, I had no idea what I wanted to do
Yeah.
with the rest of my life. And I just fell into this career, the first sort of position that would hire me that had anything to do with my college degree. I just fell into it. And from there, I thought, oh, this is good enough. So I'll
Yeah.
make a career of it. Or I don't even know if I thought that far ahead. But at one point, I was like, oh God, I can keep going on this path. But it is so normal to not know what you want to do. And also to realize that, oh my gosh, I've been doing this for so long. Is there even any other option? Like that, like having those thoughts about, is there another option for me? And thinking that there's not, that kept me stuck for a long time. And I've talked to so many women that felt the same way. And it doesn't matter your age or how far along in your career you are. If you want to make a change and you have that burning desire, you can do it. Absolutely. And it does help if you have some support along the way. Um, but yeah, that's all you need is that burning desire to get started.
Yeah, because you said, "Oh, that'll do." That's enough. That's the same with how I was. I got my degree and then got a job and was like, "Yeah, that'll do." And
Yes.
when you get to midlife, you go, "Actually, that's okay. Well, that's enough isn't enough anymore." And you have that
Yeah.
burning desire. So something I want to ask
Yeah.
you, and I'm interested to see because you work with women all the time that are in that part where they want to change their career. I want to ask you,
Yeah.
in your opinion, why do you think we're so afraid of
Mm.
trying something new, especially in our career and especially as we get older?
Yeah. Because of the way we're wired, because of the way our brains are, change is hard. We are designed to seek pleasure and avoid pain. And when we think about change, especially when it's a jump to a brand new career, the whole, fight or flight comes up and we're like, oh my gosh, our whole nervous system gets activated and all of this anxiety comes up and we're like, I can't do that. And so what's easier, or what we think is easier, is to comfort ourselves in the moment and just keep doing what we're doing. We think it's going to be harder to make a jump. But ultimately, I just urge people to really, really think about what you want, because it can be hard either way. If you're thinking it's hard, it can be hard to stay in a career that that you don't want to be in. It can be hard to make a change. But ultimately, when you're working towards following that path of what brings you joy, what lights you up, just in all areas of life, not just your career, things are going to get better. I feel like we're either moving forward, or we're moving backwards when we're stagnant and we're not learning and growing. And as humans, we are designed to evolve and to grow. And that's when we're the most fulfilled, is when we're learning and growing and all of that. So, yeah, I hope that answered your question. Now I'm forgetting what your question even
Yeah, no,
was.
you answered it perfectly. Perfect. I'd love you to tell me a bit more about the work that you do with women and the changes that you see in them, because you said that you work a lot on the subconscious. So I know in the therapy room what that sounds like, but I'd love to see
Yep.
what that sounds like with careers. How,
Yeah.
what changes do you see?
Yeah, absolutely. So, our subconscious minds, as I'm sure you are very aware, but not everyone is aware of the impact that our subconscious minds play on our life. 95% of our behavior is directed by our subconscious mind. And what I mean by that is, um, when you were a child between the ages of 0 and 7, our brains are in a state where we are taking everything in as if it were true. So we are forming beliefs about the world and how it works and about ourselves that stay with us until we're aware and we actually seek to make changes. But things such as, your beliefs around money, about work. We talked a bit about how, everyone just goes to college. That's what you do. When your parents are telling you that, these subconscious beliefs are formed. And then that's how we see the world. We all see the world differently. It's really through the lens of how our subconscious mind works, what beliefs we have that are there, kind of always just running in the background like a computer program. And so with my clients, we really work to get to the root cause of what is keeping them unhappy. So sometimes we're unhappy and we think, oh, it's all my career. If I, just move to a different job, I'll be happy. Well, then you move to a different job. Maybe it's even a completely different job. And you're like, uh-oh, things are still the same because, you know, um, who we are is who we are. It's our identity. And until we realize that we have more control over the thoughts that we have and the identity that we want to have, um, that's kind of the work I do with my clients. So when we're looking to see what sort of career they want, and we're looking at who they are as a person and really who they want to be. And so we're doing some of that deeper work to identify where the thoughts and beliefs that they have are coming from, and what's true or factual from any of that. Most of the time, it's just thoughts and beliefs that we've picked up over time. And then, looking at, are there new thoughts or new beliefs that would serve me better? And then once you start working on that and changing those beliefs, you'll start to see the world in a whole different way, and a whole new world of possibilities just opens up for you. And I'd love to hear, from your perspective too, from the kind of therapy lens, what you think.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of the things that you have said is what I say to my clients. So if any of my clients listen to this, they'll be
Mm.
like, that's what Barbara says. That's what Barbara says.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, very, very in line with what I say.
Mm.
I think a lot of us, and especially in this, when we're talking about careers today, a lot of people are on autopilot and don't realize that they are,
Yes.
you know? And so we're working alongside that, but what we're also working alongside is our brain is wired negative, like negatively. Our brain thrives off being 99.9% negative. It loves it, it's comfortable, it knows how to be negative. So whenever we want to change anything, from my perspective, we want to change anything or do anything new, it's almost going against the tide. It's going to be hard. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's not going to feel good. And for a period of time, you will go back to you will reset to your comfort zone. You will go back to what
Mhm.
you used to do because it's what you've done for your entire life. So it's kind of breaking, like you said, breaking through, breaking those patterns. And I loved that you brought up the example of a lot of people be like, oh, just go. I think a lot of people can resonate with that. And I have had a moment in time with my career where I left a job and was like, I just need something to get out of here. And then
Mhm.
the blooming thing follows you across to the other job, and you're like, huh? Wow, it's me. It's
Yeah.
not.
Yes.
It wasn't
Yep.
my boss, even though my boss was, your boss was horrible, or it was the person in accounts or the person in the warehouse or whoever that didn't like, or
Mhm.
yeah, it's interesting. And then you go to a new job and you go, oh my God, it's still hanging around.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. We replay those same patterns over and over until we learn the lessons that we need to learn and we decide to make a change, and just you mentioned the comfort zone. Just we have to keep expanding our comfort zone if we want to grow and we want to see new opportunities. I think that's so important. You just kind of push it. The more you just push it just slightly, the bigger it gets.
Are you curious to know? Because I am, and I haven't really. Oh, my old boss was one that he has had one job. He's worked up the ladder. He gets good pay. I think he's still there and he's going to retire soon, but he's happy. He loves his job. He's so set in his ways. There are some people, and I actually envy them a little bit, to be honest, um,
Yeah.
of doing the same thing for their whole life. I think and I mean, and they're genuinely happy. I think
Yes.
there's
Yeah.
some credit to those people too. I would want to do a bit of a shout out to them because I know one, and I just look at him and think, man, But I always think, are you really happy?
Yeah, and he could be. We are all wired so differently that, what makes one person happy is not what's going to make another person happy. That's why when it comes to our career or anything we do, we need to really look at ourselves and really get to know ourselves and what we want, what makes us happy, without listening to all of that external noise. We need to really get in touch with who we are and what we want, which is easier said than done, of course, but yeah, that's the only way I feel to move forward.
It is, and it's interesting because when you talk about the career, you think about it. When you go to a barbecue, maybe you've met a new partner and you're meeting their family, or you're meeting new people somewhere. It's always like, oh, what's your name? Where are you from? What do you do? So I find that language so interesting because, I've got friends that are in the police or have different jobs, and they always actually just make up stuff because they actually have fun with it. They say they're a florist or they're a bricklayer
Funny.
or like, because at the end of the day, it's so interesting how much weight that's, I think, where the people pleasing comes in. I think that's where the identity comes in. I think that's where a lot
Mhm.
of fear comes in because I think deep down, if people were to dream again like they did as children and find out what their deepest, darkest desires are, it could just be painting, or it could be knitting, or it could be weeding the garden or painting. And a lot of people are like, oh my God, Shane, there's no money in that. but I couldn't do that. And go to a barbecue. Oh, Barbara, what do you do for a job? Oh, I weed gardens or something. Like, I think there's a lot to say. I know the world is
Mhm.
changing. I know since the last few years everything has shifted. I know that once upon a time, if you worked from home, you weren't successful. And then I know maybe 15 years ago there was a shift that if you worked from home, wow, you were doing really good. Like that shift changed that, wow, you're doing really good
Mhm.
for yourself. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's just something I wanted to highlight and just get your opinion on is going back to that self-identity and how important it is to people to have a career or have a job. And no wonder it's so important to us is because it's the second or third thing that people ask us when you meet new people. Oh, so what do
Yeah.
you do? And it's interesting. I'm laughing as I say this because I used to work for a paper merchant for many years. And if anyone doesn't know what a paper merchant is, if you've seen The Office or anything, but what it is, it's basically a warehouse full of in New Zealand, we didn't make paper. We got it from overseas. And it was just a warehouse of
Mm.
pallets of paper or rolls of paper, different colors, different grammages. And I would sell that. I would market that out. So when you go to a party and people were like, oh, so what do you do? I work for a paper merchant. And then people would be like, oh, toilet paper. And then you go, no, paper, like printing press. It was the best conversation killer because people would have a blank look on their face and they'd go, oh, anyway, did you see that program the other night? Like all of us that work in that industry, and there'd be many other industries that when you go to a party or something, we used to joke about it. Oh, Barbara, what do you do? I work for a paper merchant. As soon as you say that, they'd have this glassy look over their face and they'd
Like,
be like,
huh?
I don't even know what that is, or I'm instantly bored. And then they'd go,
Yeah.
oh, anyway, so what are you doing this weekend? So for me, I never had to talk about my career because when anyone
Oh,
would ask me
funny.
what I would do, they would instantly be bored.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that you mentioned the whole people pleasing part. When people ask, what do? You like have this instinctual nature to impress people by what you do. And so, and sometimes we don't want to let go of that, or it is a huge process to let go of that while we're transitioning to something else. And that's okay. But the most important thing is to just be happy with who you are. And then once you're happy with who you are and you start to let go of all of that, the external programs and the people pleasing, et cetera, it's not going to matter, to you what Bob, the neighbor, thinks about your career. Ultimately, it just matters what you think.
Yeah, and that comes with work and practice, and that comes with
Yeah.
as a former people pleaser myself, that
Yeah.
comes with a lot of work, a lot of practice to really be comfortable with yourself, to be like, they're either my people or they're not my people. And if they don't like me or don't
Hmm.
like what I do, they're actually just not my person. There's so many billions of people.
Yes.
But that takes a practice, and I was
Yeah.
never ever like that. So that's what I want to
Yeah.
say. This stuff
Yes.
didn't come natural to me. It was something I've over time worked at. And on the occasion, I get a look or I get someone and I get that people pleasing tendency, and I have to check in with myself
Yep.
and go, Barbara, we don't do that anymore.
Yep. Yeah, yeah, and same here. I do that too, because sometimes when you have that identity too for so long, you just automatically are like, oh, wait, who am I now?
Yeah.
And how do I explain what I do? And it's just a journey, it's just a process when you're making such big changes in your life.
Oh, it's such an amazing chat that we've had today to really spark the conversation with people and to have in their households and to have with themselves. What I'm doing now, am I really happy? Is this filling a purpose? And if not, you've given us some really great steps to even just start making a list of, well, what am I unhappy with? And then flipping it to being like,
Yeah.
okay, well, what would make me happy?
Yeah.
Now, my private practice and this podcast is all about self-care too. And I
Hmm.
would love to ask you, because I do ask my guests,
Yeah.
um, two questions about self-care. The first one is like those words, what do they mean to
Mhm.
you?
Yeah. So self-care for me is really tuning inward and saying, what do I need? Like, what do I need in this moment? Um, what it's really about putting your needs first so that other people then benefit from you being your best. So, some people think of self-care and they think of, oh, bubble baths or get a massage or whatnot. And I think it really just varies based upon where you're at in your life and where you're at that day. For me, self-care means checking in with myself throughout the day and saying, what do I need right now? How am I feeling? And another thing is we are so scared sometimes of just feeling our feelings that sometimes we need to just feel our feelings. Sometimes we need just a good cry. And to me, that's self-care. So it's all about really putting yourself and your needs first.
That is so beautiful, Lexi. Thank you.
Yeah.
Everyone, listen to that. That's I love that. And the last question I want to ask you is, what are you doing at the moment? Like I said, that you're checking in with yourself, but what's one thing that you're doing for yourself at the moment that's a real key focus for taking care of yourself?
Yeah, so besides checking in with myself, I meditate on a daily basis. It's a practice I have, even if it's for 1 or 2 minutes. I just stop and get silent and really just, you know, allow things to just be as they are and just having that quiet time. For me, quiet is just so important, even if it's just a few minutes, just to have that quiet. Even though your mind's not quiet, but just some quiet in the environment, it just fuels me like nothing else does. But we're all different, Some people it might be playing their favorite song or something like that. But for me, my brain and how I work, I crave some quiet time. Yeah.
It's really nice. So if anyone is listening and they would love to work with you and love to look at their career and see if, either change their career or find out what's best for them, how can they get in contact with you?
Yeah. So I am on Instagram at Lexi Hannah Coaching, and I'm on LinkedIn at Lexi Hannah. So either of those places, feel free to send me a message. I'd love to have a chat and just start talking about what it is that you want and kind of have a conversation about what it would look like to work together. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's such an important thing for us to talk about that we do not talk enough about is our career. And when we get to the midlife part of our life, actually stop what you're doing. Are you actually fulfilled? Are you actually happy? And even if you are a mum, you're a mum of 4, great example of you can actually still be an individual. You still can choose a career. You can, do what you want to do. It's not, a lot of people are just like, oh no, I'm a mother, so I can't have my own business, or I'm in the successful job, I just can't leave it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can. You always have options. So, the possibilities are endless. And so, yeah, you're right. It's such an important conversation. And I'm so happy that you had me on the podcast. This has been great. And so thank you so much.
And I look forward to us connecting and keeping this relationship going. And next time we can always have another episode when people come back to us and say they'll have questions, and we can have another chat. So thank you so much.
That sounds great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I hope this conversation has added value to your self-care journey and inspired positive changes in your life. If you enjoyed this episode, consider sharing it with a friend who might benefit from this episode. Don't forget to subscribe on Spotify or on your favourite podcast platform to stay up to date on future episodes. Your support means the world to me. I genuinely love hearing from you, so please take a moment to leave a review. Let me know which part of today's episode resonated with you the most. Your feedback guides the direction of this podcast, and I really appreciate each and every single one of you for being a part of this community. To fall in love with yourself is the first secret to happiness. To find out a bit more about the Studio Chat podcast, head over to my Instagram page, Studio Chat Podcast, or if you want to find out a bit more about my counselling private practice, head over to Instagram on self_care_studio, or head over to my website, selfcarebybarbarathomson.com.au. I'm really looking forward to seeing you on the next episode. Until next time, take care of yourselves and keep embracing the journey of self-discovery.